I never believed in Halloween being more than costumes and candy. But that night, I learned just how wrong I was. It started when I moved into my new apartment. An old, narrow building tucked at the end of a quiet street. The neighbors were polite but distant, and the hallways smelled faintly of damp wood and something else I couldn't name. That first Halloween, I decided to stay in. I wanted to relax, maybe watch a scary movie. But as the night grew darker, I noticed something odd. The shadows in my apartment seemed alive. At first, I chalked it up to my imagination. Shadows stretch and twist in the glow of a flickering lamp, right? But these weren't normal. They moved just a fraction too fast, darting from corner to corner, as if they were watching me. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was just nerves, maybe the stress of moving. Then the knocking started. Light, hesitant, but deliberate. I pressed my ear to the door. Nothing. I opened it. No one. Just the empty hallway, dimly lit, and stretching into nothing. I locked the door, heart pounding, and turned back. That's when I saw it. My reflection in the mirror. I froze. At first, it looked like me, but the eyes were wrong. Wider, darker, glinting with something I can't describe. My reflection smiled, slowly, deliberately, a curl of lips I hadn't formed. I stumbled back, fumbling for my phone, but the battery was dead. I laughed nervously at my own panic. "It's fine. It's fine," I whispered, though the words felt hollow. Then I heard it a whisper, soft, just behind me. "Why are you alone?" I spun around. Nothing. Just my apartment. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. I convinced myself I had imagined it. The stress of being alone. But then, the shadows moved again. Not on the walls this time. On the floor. They slithered toward me. Impossibly fast. Curling like smoke around my feet. I backed up. I wanted to run. But my legs felt heavy. Unresponsive. The air grew colder, biting at my skin. The whisper came again, this time from all directions. "You can't hide." My chest tightened. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I watched in horror as my reflection stepped out of the mirror. It wasn't just an image anymore. It was real, solid, grinning. I ran, fumbling down the hallway, only to find the building's exit blocked by shadows. Then I looked at the window, and outside, reflected in the glass, was me, smiling, watching, and I knew, with terrifying certainty, that tonight, Halloween, had chosen me. Now, I sit here, writing this, hoping someone reads it, because if you're reading this on Halloween night, maybe it's already coming for you too. And there's nothing you can do but wait. I never cared much for Halloween. As a kid, I went along with the costumes and trick-or-treating, but as an adult, it felt like just another excuse for people to drink and pretend the world was scarier than it was. Then Tom, an old college acquaintance, called out of the blue, inviting me to a Halloween party at his mansion on the outskirts of town. We hadn't spoken in years, but my dull routine, work, home, sleep, made a night out tempting. I drove after sunset, the roads growing lonelier until only the dim headlights cut through skeletal trees, casting claw-like shadows. Finally, the mansion appeared, rising from the darkness like an ancient beast. Crumbling stone, twisting vines, broken windows glowing unnaturally. It looked abandoned, condemned, and alive with quiet warnings. I parked in the overgrown driveway, gravel crunching under my tires. and made my way to the front door. The wooden panels were weathered and warped, the brass handle tarnished with green patina. I hesitated, hand hovering just above the knob, but curiosity and the promise of company pushed me forward. The door groaned as I shoved it open, the sound echoing into the emptiness beyond. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and decay, thick enough that I could almost taste it. The wallpaper peeled in long strips from the walls, and the wooden floors were coated in grime. White sheets draped over the furniture, their shapes resembling hunched, silent ghosts gathered around a cold, dead fireplace. "Tom?" My voice echoed down the hallway, swallowed by the silence. No answer. I walked deeper inside, each step stirring up a cloud of dust and drawing loud creaks from the floorboards. My unease grew with every second. There was no sign of life, no music, no chatter, not even the faint hint of laughter you'd expect at a party. I reached what looked like the living room. A chandelier hung precariously from the ceiling. Half its bulbs burnt out. I pulled out my phone and sent Tom a text. "Where are you guys? This place is creepy as hell." A moment later, my phone buzzed. The reply was short. "We're upstairs. Last room on the right." I turned toward the staircase at the far end of the room. It spiraled upward into shadow. The steps bowed and splintered with age. My stomach tightened. Every instinct in me screamed to leave, to get back in my car and drive, until the mansion was nothing more than a memory. But I had already come this far. Surely this was just some elaborate Halloween prank. I could almost picture Tom and a few others hiding upstairs, waiting to leap out in costumes. I'd laugh nervously. We'd share a few drinks, and that would be the end of it. I climbed the stairs, each step groaning under me. Cold air and creeping darkness clung like shadows. At the landing, the narrow hallway stretched ahead, lined with portraits whose eyes seemed to follow me. The last door on the right was ajar. From inside came a faint, rhythmic creak like a rocking chair. My hand shook as I pushed it open. The room was empty, or almost empty. In the far corner, caught in the weak light from the hallway, an old rocking chair shifted back and forth, creaking with each movement. But there was no one in it. The air grew heavier, thick with a sense of dread that pressed down on me. I stepped back, heart hammering. When the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang, I spun around, grabbing the knob it wouldn't turn. Panic surged through me. I was trapped. Then I heard it. Slow, deliberate footsteps outside the door. Closer. Louder. My chest tightened as though invisible hands were pressing down on me. My legs felt like lead. Suddenly, the door burst open. I didn't look to see who or what stood there. Instinct took over. I bolted, sprinting down the hallway. The echo of my footsteps chased by something heavier. Faster. The pounding grew closer, reverberating through the wooden floor. I flew down the stairs, nearly tripping in desperation. The mansion seemed to close in around me. Walls pressing tighter, air thick and choking. I burst through the front door, cold air slicing my lungs. I looked back once. A dark figure stood at the upstairs window, watching. Its face was hidden, but its gaze burned into me. I sped off, hands shaking, heart pounding. When I got home, every message from Tom was gone. The next day I learned he'd moved to Europe months ago. Whoever lured me there wasn't him. And that figure, it's still out there, still watching. I never believed in the supernatural haunted houses, restless spirits, Halloween whispers, just stories to thrill the night. That was, until last Halloween, late and alone after a party, I cut through Miller's Field, a place no one dared enter after dark. Locals whispered about a cursed scarecrow that came alive each Halloween, hunting for a new soul. I had always laughed it off until that night. The field lay in silence, the corn stalks dry and brittle, rustling faintly as I stepped between the rows. Shadows stretched long and sharp under the pale moonlight, and the wind seemed to murmur warnings that I didn't understand. My footsteps stirred a fragile echo through the stalks, brushing against my arms, as if the plants themselves were trying to hold me back. I laughed nervously, telling myself it was just the wind, just my imagination. And then, I saw it. At first, it looked like nothing more than a scarecrow, slouched on its post at the center of the field. Its head was a burlap sack, stitched with a crooked, unnatural grin. Old clothes, stuffed with straw. But the moment I truly looked at it, something felt wrong. Its shoulders were too broad, its limbs too long. The head tilted at a strange, impossible angle, like it was observing me with intent. I tried to keep moving, telling myself not to stop, not to look back. But when I tore my eyes away and glanced ahead, it had moved. It never made a sound, no creak of wood, no snap of straw, just a presence. The rustle of the corn stalks seemed to follow it. Yet my body felt leaden, weighed down by some unseen force. Then, instinct finally overtook paralysis. I bolted, tearing through the stalks blindly, my breath ragged, and my heart hammering, as the field seemed to stretch endlessly around me. When I finally stumbled into the light of the street lamps, gasping for air, I dared to look back. The scarecrow was gone. Relief washed over me. Perhaps it had all been imagination, a trick of the dark, my own panic, manifesting into a shape in the field. I reached home and slammed the door behind me, laughing at myself for being such a fool. I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my shaking hands and calm my racing heart. Then I heard it. A soft, deliberate tap against the window pane. My laughter died instantly. I forced myself to look. There it was. The scarecrow. Its burlap face stretched into that grotesque grin, wider than before. Its straw fingers scraped along the glass, leaving ghostly streaks. My stomach turned, my mind scrambling to make sense of what I was seeing. Then, the blood ran cold. My reflection was gone. The thing, staring back at me through the glass, wasn't outside at all. It was inside. I stumbled back, my heart hammering as I scrambled for the door. But it was too late. The air in the room thickened, heavy with the smell of decaying straw and wet earth. Shadows pooled in the corners, moving with a life of their own. The scarecrow stepped off the windowsill, or perhaps it had always been there, unseen until now, and the floorboards groaned under its impossible weight. It didn't speak, but its presence spoke volumes. I could feel it probing my mind, searching, learning, sizing me up. My instincts screamed to fight, to run, yet I could barely move. Its stitched grin widened as if mocking my terror. Then it advanced, slow and deliberate. Each step seemed to bend the world around it, shadows twisting unnaturally. The room grew colder, the walls pressing closer. I stumbled backward, tripping over furniture, my hands clawing at the floor. And in the dim light, I saw it clearly. The limbs were too long, too angular. The burlap face, it shifted subtly, blinking with dark, soulless eyes that glimmered with malice. Panic surged as I yanked the door open and ran. The scarecrow followed, silent, a nightmare of straw and shadow. I slammed the door behind me and tore into the night, lungs burning. At my apartment, I thought I was safe until I saw it in the window. Its stitched grin wider, straw fingers scraping, dark eyes boring into me. It wasn't outside. It was inside. Halloween would never feel safe again. I'd always enjoyed Halloween. The costumes, the decorations, the playful scares, they were harmless fun. But last year, something happened that made me question everything I thought I knew about the holiday. That night, the streets were quiet, eerily quiet. The laughter and shrieks of children had faded hours ago, leaving only stray candy wrappers skittering across the pavement, crunching beneath my shoes as I walked. Porch lights blinked out one by one, houses retreating into darkness, shutting themselves off from the night. Most of the neighbors' efforts for Halloween had long since fallen silent, their inflatable ghosts sagging, fog machines sputtering weakly. Only a few stragglers lingered under dim streetlights, their painted faces glowing faintly as they hurried home. I regretted staying at my friend's party so late. I wished I had left earlier. The walk home wasn't long, barely over a mile, but the silence pressed against me. Normally, I welcomed it. I often enjoyed the solitude of nighttime walks, the chance to think, to sort through the clutter of the day. But this night felt different. The air wasn't just cool, it was sharp, almost alive, as though it were pushing me forward, hurrying me along, before something could catch up. Most of the neighborhood decorations were harmless, even cheerful, but one yard stood out. A front lawn transformed into a miniature graveyard, foam tombstones jutting from the ground like jagged teeth. Skeletons taller than a man stood guard, their hollow eyes glowing sickly green, casting eerie beams across the sidewalk. Just beyond the halo of green light from the decorations, a figure stood motionless at the edge of the sidewalk. For a moment, I thought he was part of the display, another skeleton or mannequin in a costume, but there was something wrong about him, as though he had stepped out of a shadow that wasn't supposed to exist. He wore a long, dark coat that swallowed his thin frame, making him look impossibly tall, unnaturally stretched. His face was hidden behind a cheap plastic mask, the kind you'd find in a bargain bin, but its grin was grotesque, cartoonish, stretched impossibly wide, gleaming under the faint streetlight. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. A trick? A prank? I forced out a nervous, "Nice costume," raising a hand in a weak wave. The silence answered me. He didn't move. He didn't wave back. He simply watched, unblinking. I forced myself to keep walking, repeating in my head that it was nothing more than Halloween fun, a neighbor's joke. But my footsteps echoed strangely against the pavement, unnaturally loud, and each time I glanced over my shoulder, he remained, a black silhouette, unmoving. By the time I reached my driveway, panic had rooted itself in my chest. He had moved. Now he stood at the end of the driveway, still and silent beneath the streetlight. I rushed inside, slamming the door behind me and twisting the lock until it clicked. My back pressed against the wood, chest heaving, mind racing. It was a prank. It had to be. Just a prank. I tried to calm myself. The living room felt oppressive, the silence heavy, unnatural. I paced, turned on the TV, scrolled mindlessly through my phone, anything to distract myself. But every few minutes, I found myself drawn to the window. Each time I looked, he was there, watching, patient, unmoving. Hours dragged. Midnight passed. 1 o'clock. That figure, a shadow carved into the night, remained at the end of the driveway. Eventually, I must have dozed on the couch, because the next thing I knew, sunlight streamed through the blinds. Relief surged through me. The driveway was empty. I laughed nervously, shaking my head. Perhaps I had imagined it. A kid in a mask. A Halloween prank. Maybe. Then I saw it. On the porch, placed carefully in the center of the welcome mat, lay the mask. Its grotesque grin seemed darker in the morning light. Beside it was a scrap of paper, crumpled and smeared with dirt. My hand trembled as I bent down to pick it up. Unfolding it, I read the message scrawled in jagged handwriting, sharp as a knife. "I'll be back tonight." The paper slipped from my fingers. My stomach twisted violently. I stumbled backward, slamming the door shut again. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't something that would end when Halloween did. It was something else, something that had already found me. And I knew, with a terror that settled deep in my bones, that it wasn't going to stop.